Hello, dear friends. Here we are. This is Cardiac Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls with the ideas of Spiritism, its teachings, its insights, its guidance. And you're welcome to join us today as we're studying another chapter of the book Evolution in Two Worlds. Since November 1st of 2018, we've started the study of the preface and the chapters of the book Evolution in Two Worlds, a book that contains two prefaces, one by Emmanuel, another by Luiz, the spirit author of the book, and 40 chapters that are divided in two parts. Part 1, 20 chapters. It's about the evolution of the spiritual body. Part 2, life issues according to Spiritism. Yes, 20 other chapters. Today we're studying chapter 16. Can you believe it? Yes, we're only 4 days away from completing the study of this book. And of course, this book is super deep, like all the Spiritist books. And we recommend that you study it with a group. Kardec Radio is bringing to us highlights so we can be encouraged to read and study it. Okay? Today we're going to talk about sex determination. Let's not forget, this book was psychographed by the mediums Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira in 1958, published by the Brazilian Spiritist Federation in Portuguese. The translation that we're providing is our translation that was done since 2011. And we are sharing with you this study with the aim of bringing to you new nourishment. As André Luiz says in the preface of this book comes to give us consolation. So this book is not for those only who are studying science, scientists, etc. No, he says, no, this book is for the tortured of the heart and the tortured of the mind. So, us. And as we collect this information, these revelations, it brings peace to our hearts because, after all, Spiritism is the promised consoler. What a joy, isn't it? Talking about joy, we are few weeks away from Christmas in 2018, and it's joy to the world. But if you are watching this on demand and it's past Christmas, remember, Christmas should be every day. It's about the joy of the Christ presence in our lives, changing our lives to immortality. So welcome, dear friends, and join us in the study of tonight. Shall we begin? We ask the good spirits to guide us, to protect us, and to open ourselves even more so we can understand our lives, ourselves, and others in different ways and means to progress more steadily. Let us begin. Sex determination. So let me share the slides with you because it makes it so much easier, right? So slides, here they come. All right. Sex determination, chapter 16, part 2. Here we are. André Luiz begins the chapter with a question. And the question is, what should we think of the possibility of human science promoting the determination of sexes at the beginning of pregnancy? Remember, this is a question that was asked in 1958 when science didn't talk about those things yet. I mean, they talked about the possibility, but didn't have the means as we do nowadays to doing it. Just last week, we had a scientific paper published when a Chinese group talked about how they actually interfered at some point and changed right? The sex of the fetus. It's still ongoing. We have several information about science and even natural ways in which science tells us that we can potentially influence the determination of the sex of a future baby. Okay? We'll talk about it. Let's go to the first paragraph. This answer by Andre Luiz is composed of 3 paragraphs. Paragraph number 1, he says, considering that the gonadal design in vertebrates contains bisexual potentialities in the beginning of the fetal formation, it is clearly possible the intervention of human science in the determination of sexes. So he's talking about these bisexual potentialities. Remember, in many chapters prior to this one, he talks about it. Okay? Uh, he talks about this potentiality, physically speaking. So we're just gonna make a short break from Andre Luiz's explanation to give more information to those who are following this study. According to science, he talks about the gonads. So let's see what it is. The gonad is the organ that makes the gametes. The gonads in males are the testes, and the gonads in females are the ovaries. The product, the gametes, are haploid germ cells. For example, spermatozoon and egg cells are gametes. Okay? A little more information. This is just a short um, drawing about the reproductive system of women on the right and men on the left. And you're going to see here parts of the gonads as we said here before, right? The testes in men and the ovaries in women, right? You can see here clearly, right? We are here to revisit this, and the testes here in men, the ovaries in women, the testes in men, where the gametes are produced, right? So the gametes in women, the egg cells, and men, the sperms. Let's not forget that when we talk about gonads, we're talking about organs that depend on the input of hormones and that they depend also in the functioning of the nervous system. As you can see here, this is a brief summary of areas in the brain and also glands out of the brain that influence the gonadal function, okay? The release of sperms and egg cells. So we have the hypothalamus and the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, and you're going to see the 10,000 hormones that are released influence it all. And out of the nervous system, we have the thyroid, part of the endocrine system that influence our gonads. Okay, I'm just giving you a brief summary so we can feel a little more what Andre Luiz says. So let's go back to what he was saying. So he says we have bisexual potentialities that can be defining the sexes, and certainly due to that reason that happens at the beginning of the fetal formation, we can intervene and change it. Okay? Rihanna is saying, we must not interfere in the manifestation of a Aswan incarnate. We will make their trials in this life much more difficult. You see, that's the direction, Rihanna. So, but it's interesting because in Spiritism there is no prohibition, but there is an explanation, there's guidance. So the beauty of this book, observe in every chapter, Andre Luiz, okay, Let me share this with you. Let's focus on this. Observe how he writes the book. Because the way Andre Luiz writes the book tells about the stature of the spirit. He doesn't come prohibiting. He doesn't come bashing anyone. He comes with a fact. He says, yes, because we have these bisexual potentialities at the very first stages of gestation, it is possible for us to intervene and change or determine the sex. Mhm. Fact, fact. But now he's going to talk about consequences. For every action, there is a reaction. So what if we do? And nowadays, it is a topic that is in vogue nowadays. Many people discussing this, willing to understand more about the potential, the possibilities. We have in vitro fertilizations in which science has methods. For example, they select. There is a still controversial but possible. They say that the sperms that contain the male the male potentiality, they are faster swimmers. So they observe it, they select it, and then they provide the elements for the conception. We're talking about IVF method, okay? They say the sperms that contain the female potentiality swim slower. So they select, and if that's the preference, they make it happen. The other thing they say, even natural methods that they recommend, if you, they talk about the sexual intercourse positions that may potentially do this, that, and the other. They talk about the temperature. They talk about the. I'm not gonna give in all the information because that's not the reason why we're here. But just saying, there is enough information, natural and scientific, that people may use to give their give their touch in terms of the determination of the sex of the baby. Okay? But the question is, as Rihanna is pointing out, the consequences. Are there consequences? Is it good or bad? One thing we know, there's nothing neutral in life. Anything that we do will produce consequences. So we need to verify beforehand. Okay? But we are going to say much more than any scientific approach is the mind of the father and the mother. Mhm. We interfere. We interfere not only with the determination of the sex, but we interfere with the well being of this spirit that is incarnating and the impact in the long run of life. Well, let's go to Andre Luiz because he's going to review to us the effects of such interference, okay? So let's see what he says. However, it is important to consider that such interference in the destinies of human beings would bring unforeseeable consequences to the moral organization amongst themselves. And he says, this unfounded action in the morphologic area would perhaps impose unnecessary inversions and imprint serious complications to the inner self of those who would be submitted to such experimental processes, absolutely contrary to the intelligence that reflects God's wisdom. So observe what he says. First, we're interfering in somebody's destiny. One. Two, there will be consequences. To what? Moral consequences. Now, this is grave, and we want to discuss this. We want to discuss precisely what he's saying here to us, right? He's talking about moral consequences. Why is he saying that? Do you remember a chapter we studied about affective discipline and another chapter, affective conduct? We talked about why we are born and reborn with the possibilities of being the garment of a male or female body. There are lessons to be learned. There are roles to be played that depend on that anatomy, that physiology. We cannot lose sight that those impact greatly in our progress. If we go to cases that were studied by Ian Stevenson or Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia, psychiatrists, unbiased by any religious concept, they studied cases of children who remembered previous lives, and they observed cases of inversion when a girl from India feeling like a man entrapped in the body of a woman, girl. She brought the information that she knew why she was reborn in the body of a girl. She said, in a previous life, I was a lawyer who abused women. And then I asked to reincarnate in the body of a woman to learn how to respect women and have my family and be a mother. So then she grew up, got married, had children, and embraced her inversion. So here we have it. One case explaining to us. In the book 15 Cases of Previous Lives by Amália Domingo Soler, we have the case of a girl who is incarnated, mute, deaf, paralyzed, and completely mentally retarded. She cannot communicate at all. And the good spirits explained through Amália Domingo Soler that in a previous life she was a criminal, an outlaw, man who seduced women, robbed, killed, etc. In this life, she had to be constricted and restricted from many things, plus being in the body of a girl to soothe herself, the spirit in itself. So, as we talked about the feminine and the masculine potentialities of the soul, when we are reborn in the body of a woman, we're supposed to focus not only, but mostly on the feminine acquisitions. But we need to study what they are. The feminine has nothing to do with the prejudices of the world. Some people believe that the feminine is weak, and that's why many women do not accept their femininity, because they feel it's weak to be feminine. But look at Jesus, the perfect model. The feminine in Jesus is perfect. Compassion, love, caring, renunciation, but strong. And when we are reborn in the body of a man, there are many things we need to pursue, feminine and masculine, but there are certain qualities of the masculine that we need to focus. So only a self-study will tell us which are the things that we are to acquire in that life. But we need to study ourselves, not to miss the boat. of this life. So Andre Luiz is telling us that when we are interfering in the determination of the sex of the fetus, we are interfering with the destiny of that soul. And that will cause moral impediments. Then in the next slide, he tells us about unnecessary inversions. Inversion is a term, sexual inversion, that was created in the 19th century in psychology to explain when people like this girl from India, studied by Dr. Ian Stevenson, she was a case of inversion. She didn't feel herself as a girl, though in the body of a girl. Okay? But then she accommodated herself later. So it's not impossible to accept. It may be difficult, but not impossible. So for us here, the attention to be focused upon is, am I going to create that discomfort to my son or my daughter? And the question is, why do I need to determine it if I don't know what that spirit needs? So basically when people ask, but Vanessa, if God allows us to choose, can't I choose? But if I don't have the whole case of this spirit in my hand, who am I to decide which clothes they're going to wear? Men or woman clothes? I cannot choose it. I don't know what they need to learn in this life. I may learn as they are born, and in the long run, we may assist as parents, because that's the goal of parents. But we don't have access to those files. In planets where we're more evolved, we may participate more consciously in the determination of the sex, but not on Earth yet. We don't have access to the information that the spirits, the engineers of the beyond, as we learn in the book Nosso Lar by André Luiz, we learn that there is a whole department of reincarnation, an institute that takes care of the planning of the reincarnations. So, who are we to enter the planning of such reincarnation if we barely know about our own lives? By doing so, André Luiz says, it's going to create serious complications to the spirit that is incarnating. Talk about names. Huh? We can choose the name of the spirit, right? That is incarnating. And people sometimes don't put too much thought to that importance. And then I see many people who dislike their names. And I see crazy names that parents give out of not really liking the spirit that is being reborn. I know of a man in Brazil. His father gave him a name, Pipi, meaning xixi, meaning pee. Why? Because when the mother was pregnant, this man had urinary incontinence. So then he named his future son P. Like, what? Certainly, we're talking about a case in which they don't like each other, or at least he doesn't like the son, for sure, because you're not going to give the name to your son P or poop or something that is funny or not that funny, right? It's demeaning. So, by choosing the name, it's already complex. Imagine choosing the sex that really changes the whole life of that spirit. Read the book 50 Years Later by Emmanuel, and we're gonna see the life of Celia, that for um, circumstances in life, to survive, she had to live the life of a man. It's not easy. It's not simple. So to create that embarrassment or that hassle to your child is not love. Conclusion, we're not ready to go there. We're not ready to go there. In fertility clinics, they talk about balancing the family. It's a real thing. They say, oh, if you're a couple and you have already one child, let's say a boy, and you want to make sure that you're going to have a girl, you come to their clinic, you pay some amount of money, and they can work on it for you to make sure that you're going to have a girl, or vice versa. What if the spirit that is to be reincarnated is not supposed to be in the body of a girl? But then we are going to impose that on us. So we would say, in other words, for us on earth, since we don't have the files of the needs of that spirit yet, we should not interfere in the determination of the sex. Is that the bottom line? Yes, it is. I think this chapter gives us a lesson of humility, right? Of all things, this chapter is inviting us to humility. Humility when we can do things, but we shouldn't do it because it's not charitable. If we talk about charity in this chapter, André Luiz is inviting us to be charitable, to be less egotistic, to be more humble. And when we talk about humility, we're talking about trusting God. Humility is associated with our surrender to God. I surrender so much that I believe that God's going to provide what we need, not what I want. So that's the invitation for us. This chapter is inviting us to humble ourselves to the greatness of life. I may change the course of events, but when it's interfering with somebody else's life that may join us, I cannot go there. Learning that fine line between what I can do and what I should do. That's precisely the line we're talking about. Learning to respect the right of the fetus. The right of the fetus. As Mentor Joseph says, we are to enter on earth not the discussion about abortion and the rights of abortion, but the rights of the fetus. The day on earth we establish the rights of the fetus, our society is more evolved. Because the spirit that is incarnating is totally at the mercy of society, of the mother and of society. The day we protect the most vulnerable form of life, which is the fetus, that day the earth is going to celebrate a new era on earth, because the fetus is the ultimate fragile phase of our lives. The day we secure on earth the rights of the fetus, respecting it and caring for it as a society, and change all the laws to the point that we're going to give to this gestating mother special conditions to live a gestation at peace, if she works, but she'll be given the opportunity of resting enough, taking care of herself and the fetus, then our society has changed. Meanwhile, we need to keep meditating on this and say, we can, but we shouldn't, just because we don't have enough material to partake in such important and vital decision in the reincarnation of a spirit. Okay, friends? In the next 24 hours, let us meditate where we are in our practice of humility. Have we surrendered enough to God to stop manipulating people, to stop any form of coercion and imposition from our wills and whims onto somebody else's life? Or are we still egotistical and prideful to the point that we impose on others our own will? Hmm? Somebody whom I can't see the name asks, how ethical is it that modern medicine allows for individuals to change their gender? Is this really helpful or hurtful to those who go through a gender identity crisis? Let me see if I understand. To change their sex? You're talking. There is an episode in which we talked about difference between sex and gender. Sex is the biological. Gender is the role. Okay? So, uh, current science allows us to change the physical, right? I can be born in the body of a woman and change to being a man. Okay? And in this chapter, we're not talking about people who are already grown ups. We're talking about the fetus because the fetus doesn't have a voice. The spirit that is. So that is a no no. Okay? So I'm not so sure if this answers to the question, but we talked about the other cases in previous chapters, and we would recommend that you watch Affective Discipline and Affective Conduct as means to answer to this question. Okay? Yeah, I agree, Rihanna. The teachings are surprisingly revealing. They are revealing, and that's why they're consoling, right, Rihanna? They bring to us so much guidance and consolation. So thank you, friends. Let us meditate on our level of humility, surrender to God, and acceptance. Are we totally accepting the proposal of God in our lives, including in the body that we're given? Or are we struggling, bumping heads, and having a hard time? So let us meditate on this. Tomorrow, we're going to study chapter 17. Our dear friend Marco Magalhães is going to come to lead us into the discussion about the Spiritist view on discarnation in the book Evolution into Worlds. I'll see you on Tuesday night when we come back for more teachings regarding the book Evolution into Worlds. A big hug to all of you, friends, and let us thank God for the opportunity of understanding a little more about lives. A big hug to you. May God bless us all. And until next time.